Welcome back. Well, one of the things that we've done on this special when it comes to housing is, I think, talk to people who've been there, done it at the actual coalface of helping people in housing, mainly because they've seen sorts of stuff that doesn't work. And into that category, very neatly, falls my next guest. It's something I touched on with Will Guyatt when it came to all things technical, talking about this UK tech startup. It's called Switchy, and it's been one of the people behind it's been working with the housing sector since 2015 and believes in, quote, the power of technology to improve the quality of life for residents while transforming the operating model for providers. Win-win when it comes to energy costs. Joining me now is the CEO of a company called Switchy, Tom Robbins, who's going to explain, A, what Switchy is all about and how it helps tenants. Thank you so much for joining me, Tom. So I always misquote Julie Andrews, start at the very beginning. What is Switchy? What does it do? Just give us the bare bones that we can understand what this is all about and how it helps tenants.
No, thank you very much indeed for the invitation. So Switchy, as you say, exists to improve the quality of life for people living in rented homes. And it's our belief that technology that is very commonly available to most consumers would make a real difference if that data was better used and was used to inform better decisions from landlords. So we have a piece of technology, an insights and analytics platform that informs landlords. So from a resident perspective, they have a smart thermostat. So if you've got a Nest or a Hive or something at home, but that technology saves you money on your fuel bills, improves the comfort in your home, but isn't available to social or rented tenants. So it's a bit of hardware that behaves like a Nest or a Hive, saves residents money on their fuel bills. So it's all really positive and improves the sort of comfort in their homes, but it uses the same data to help inform landlord decision making. And I was listening to your last guest, and so much of what we see in housing is based on complaints, right? It's based on people having a problem. It's purely reactive. And in no other sector, in no other industry would we operate in a way that was quite so reactive. Whereas the data exists and we're able to support landlords, support social landlords in identifying problems much earlier, enabling them to be proactive rather than reactive. The sort of situations that we're seeing in many homes should never have existed to start with. And by using the data, and again, listening to your previous guests and talking about some of the challenges in understanding what's going on with mold really isn't that complicated. There's sort of four primary drivers of mold. So either there's too much moisture being created, or the moisture isn't able to get out the property quick enough, or the property isn't properly insulated, or the property isn't properly heated. And there's a lot of focus, again, on that idea that residents are creating too much moisture. But actually, from the data, we probably don't see that so often the case, actually. It's going to be one of the other three factors.
So when you say the data, so they've got something like a Nest or one of those things, and what sort of information would it be giving a landlord to flag up that in this block of flats or in this area, X is a problem?
Well, so landlords have a responsibility under the Fitness for Human Habitation Act to deliver a high quality service, deliver a high quality home. And the data that we collect is the same data that's used to optimize the heating and to deliver the resident a more efficient experience. So, for example, the temperature, humidity, the pressure in the property, that information collected with some other open sources of data, for example, the temperature in the area, weather data, that kind of stuff, can help through a bunch of algorithms identify properties that are at risk, tenants that are at risk, and be proactive in delivering services to those that need it most.
And just to explain for people who aren't tech savvy, how these, something like Switchy, I mean, there's a lot of, I'm not assuming anything, but how something like Switchy, you say it saves on bills, it saves on costs. For the tenant, how? How does it do that? What does it do?
Well, there's two ways that it does that. The first way that it does that is by more efficiently managing the way that the boiler heats up and cools down. Most thermostats are quite aggressive in the way that they modulate the use of the boiler, whereas Switch enables the boiler to be used more efficiently. One of the most powerful things that we have, though, is supporting tenants in setting efficient schedules for their boiler. So, for example, what we find is that I don't know if you ever. I find that most kind of 7-day thermostats are, you need a PhD in physics to work out what's going on, right? And just turning your thermostat on and off aggressively is the least efficient way of heating your home, and it's the least efficient way of using your boiler. So by having an intelligent schedule, and we've got a bunch of services we support landlords with, we can chat directly to residents, they can phone us, we can set them remotely. By having an efficient schedule combined with more efficient use of the modulation in the heating, we've been independently tested. We work with a charity called NEA, it's National Energy Action, and they independently tested our thermostat to save residents about 17% on their fuel bills. And that's material in current fuel prices.
Absolutely, it is. Now, it strikes me also, again, talking about Christian, the lawyer, and talking about Awaab's law with that awful case where the little boy died as a result of mold being in the house. It strikes me that if you have got a landlord, social housing, whatever, who has is disputing, as so often is done, it's, because of your cooking practice, blah, 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 blah. It strikes me that the presentation of the kind of information about which you're talking would kind of shut that down pretty quickly.
Well, I mean, look, I think we're talking about there's a lot is posed here where it's suggesting that the landlord and the tenant are at odds and at war here, and all there essentially is a lack of information. The landlord doesn't know what's going on inside the property and how it's being used. The tenant isn't able to communicate that accurate data from the property, but actually by what we find with I think we're 130 different housing associations and local authorities across the UK, they want the information. They want to know what's going on so they can do something about it. And if it is the case that the ventilation is a problem, they can go and fix it. They want to go and fix it. It's the lack of understanding that really creates the challenge here, and that's the problem we're trying to solve. One thing that I don't feel has been talked enough about in the mold challenge, and it's something that I really care quite passionately about, is that the fourth reason I talked about there, the fourth reason why people get mold in their homes is because the home is insufficiently heated. And we've been through an energy crisis over the last few years now, and that energy crisis is making the problem worse for everybody. But if there was a chance of mold before and you're cutting back and using less heating, then there's going to be more mold. And there's, in fact, if you don't sufficiently heat your home, no matter how good the other variables are, you're going to get mold. And so we've got to look at this in the bigger picture, right? We have an energy crisis. We need to also make sure the people that need it most are getting the support that they need to heat their homes to the right temperature. And that's a big part of mold too.
And when you talk about the right temperature, because people will be thinking, as you talk about the cost of energy crisis, all right, I can't afford to have this warm, but I can afford to have it warm enough to keep the ice from forming on the inside of my windows. There's obviously an optimum temperature to prevent these sorts of things, and I guess it's one that people wouldn't even know about. They wouldn't even think about.
Well, look, and that's definitely a big challenge, and just that it's as you heat your home to the right temperature, the way that you heat your home is quite important as well. And again, you've got to think about the human element here. So, as humans, we like radiant heat, right? We want to sit around campfires, right? Like we want a hot radiator, okay? And the best, in terms of quality of life, and what we see with a lot of people that have a very limited amount of money to heat their homes, is they will heat their homes to a warm temperature for a short period of time. Right. They will effectively cycle through, for example, you'll have the heating on a Saturday evening once a week, and that's it. And there's many people out there that are making those kind of decisions. The problem with mold is that really what mold needs is the property to be consistently at 16 degrees. So you heating your property to 21, 22 degrees for once a week, which is what's going to make you feel best on a Saturday night with ant and egg, isn't actually what your property needs. And there's an education piece there in how do we help people understand, or how are we allocating the resources, the fuel vouchers, the additional support that's out there to help people best.
Well, news, of course, that Labour is talking about not, as far as pensioners are concerned and fuel vouchers and what have you, must make you absolutely cringe. Just to quickly finish off, do you find what Angela Rayner had to say, does it give you more hope?
So look, I'm really positive. We've been doing our best to support Angela's team with some of the data that we have to help them make better informed decisions. I know the pensioner thing is the pensioner fuel voucher thing is quite challenging. The one thing I would say here is we're a big believer in data. We're about allocating resources to the people that need it most. A blanket allocation of a voucher across an entire group based on age, I don't think is good use of resources. Now, particularly people that live in fuel efficient homes, we've worked with customers that have had their homes retrofitted with the latest fuel efficient technology. They're making a profit on the fuel voucher because their costs don't come to it. That's not good use of our funds. It's about allocating those limits. But actually, my argument here is not that it's a bad thing. It's just we're allocating on the wrong metric. Let's find the people that need it most, and probably we should be giving them more, right? Rather than the people that don't necessarily need it and are donating it to charity because they feel uncomfortable taking it.
Yeah, make a good point. You make a good point. Tom, thank you so much for speaking with us. That's Tom Robbins, CEO of Switchy, talking about smart energy and how it can help social housing, and I'm guessing private housing,